Hello, everyone. I'm Alice Park, National Health Correspondent for Time. I'm excited to welcome you to Time for Health Talks. During this series, you'll hear from leading voices in wellness to explore how to live a healthier, more balanced life. Today's discussion is brought to you by CVS Health. Now I'd like to introduce my colleague, Mandy Oaklander, who will lead a conversation about meditation. Over to you, Mandy.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Time for Health Talks. Today, we're focusing on mindfulness for a stressful world. I'm joined by Goldie Hawn, actress and founder of Mind Up, a mindfulness program for children, and Amishi Jha, a neuroscientist at the University of Miami, studying how to make the brain work better under stress. Amishi, I'd love to start with you. What is mindfulness, and how is it useful in times of pain and stress?
Yes, great question. So mindfulness, the way that we think about it and the way in which we study it in my lab has to do with a way of paying attention. And it has these specific qualities. So it's about paying attention in the present moment, non-judgmentally. So what I mean by that is essentially being in the here and the now without a story about it, without editorializing or reacting to it emotionally. And part of the reason it's so helpful under high stress circumstances is that it's that reactivity, that story-making aspect of our mind that can actually hijack us away from the here and the now. So all of a sudden, we're worrying about things that not only have not happened yet, but may actually never happen. That just aggravates and accelerates the amount of stress we experience. So mindfulness can be very helpful because it kind of gets us out of that mode of reacting to our present moment experience so we can actually really be here for the moments of our lives.
You know, Amishi, I have to say, Amishi's like one of truly, she was my teacher, okay? And we met many years ago, 20-something years ago, and greatest teacher of all. One of the ways in which we get through this time period is actually focusing on the now. And I think that's extremely important for the sense of catastrophizing tomorrow. Right now, it's important right now. I'm with you, you know, I've got my Kurt's upstairs. My dogs are here. I'm so grateful for this moment. And if we can do that, then we are practicing mindfulness, right?
Exactly. The fact that we don't default to this way of being is what makes training the mind in this way so important, because sometimes the mind has a mind of its own and we can actually go off in many different directions.
Exactly. There's other wonderful things that come from mindfulness. There's equanimity. There's an idea that we actually, you know, have a sense of witnessing our thoughts, that there is empathy that can arise from it. How does that happen?
You ask the best questions. This is why I said you're one of my favorite students, and I would say hardest pupils. Because you always ask the challenging questions. But essentially, I would say that the ability to focus is just the starting point. As you said, sort of the tip of the iceberg. And in some sense, it's, you know, some of my wonderful military colleagues call it's push-ups for the mind, so that we have the core strength to do these other things. Because the ability to be empathetic, to have compassion, the ability to perspective take, as well as the ability to know that we are not our thoughts, right? Those require a steadiness of mind, this capacity to hold really purposefully present so that we can shift perspective in the way that's needed, either away from ourselves to look at our thoughts in the moment, or toward another person with this highly resonating mind and heart to experience what they're experiencing. And all of these are aspects of what the different exercises of mindfulness training allow us to do, including, I think, the whole suite of practices that you offer in the Mind Up program. But we need to do these various exercises to have our core capacity to be mindful, be stronger every day in terms of just ongoing engagement with the practice.
So Goldie, you started Mind Up after 9/11, another really devastating time in our history. How can mindfulness help children who are dealing with difficult times like the ones we're in right now?
Well, back then, it was helpful for children because it helped them not only reduce stress, which I think is really vitally important, but also I put in a little understanding about their brain because every child has one. And we don't tell them how it works. So the idea of them understanding at least the emotional system of the brain or the limbic system and how to calm down that in order that their prefrontal cortex opens, they can think better, they can learn better, they can make better choices. They start to learn why they're having a brain break, why we meditate, why we're in a mindfulness state of mind. And with that, it makes a big difference because they become to self-regulate. They're able to take charge of their own lives. And that's what we want to have when we recognize I'm angry, I'm scared, I'm reactive, I'm all of these things. And at the same time, you say, but I don't like that. I want to feel differently. Well, if we practice mindfulness, if we do this regularly, then eventually our brain will slowly default to a better state of mind. Does it change the circumstance? No. But what they understand is that the brain itself actually can reorganize our thoughts around this in order to have better brain fitness. That, I think, is self-care.
Amishi, this is pretty much your specialty. You do mindfulness training for people living with all kinds of stress. You've even taught active duty soldiers how to meditate. How do you train mindfulness, and can anyone learn it?
To answer the second question quickly, yes, I think it's absolutely possible for anyone to learn this. In terms of how we train mindfulness, I mean, I would say, I'm a neuroscientist, but the specific area of research in my lab has to do with the brain's ability to pay attention. And what we know is that attention has so many different qualities. We need it for everything. So focusing, noticing, making decisions, regulating our emotions. And over high stress intervals, what we also know is that this precious brain capacity becomes degraded. So now all of a sudden, if you don't have the main resources that your mind needs in order to regulate your mood and to pay attention to what's happening right now, the chances of errors are greater, the chances of dysregulated mood are greater, of really poor health choices, health behavioral choices. And in some sense, we can't avoid the high stress interval, whether it's right now, all of us sort of being quarantined in our homes and have life really, really not regular, not normal, or if it's a service member preparing for a military deployment or being deployed, or an undergraduate, actually just going through the academic semester, the high stress circumstances aren't going to go away. So what we do with regard to mindfulness training is we offer them, it's very similar to Mind Up, a suite of practices that they get introduced to formally by a mindfulness instructor. And those are tapping into various aspects of cultivating a mind in this way. So practices that have to do with focusing. And I always like to talk about focusing almost like the brain's internal flashlight, right? Wherever we focus our attention, we get better access to that information. But often what happens when we're tired or depleted is that flashlight gets yanked around, it's all over the place. And we don't know how to use it or get a handle on it so that we can keep steady with what we're experiencing. So part of what we want to do is train them to focus by noticing sensations of the breath, for example, or taking that flashlight and kind of running it through the entirety of the body. So we reacquaint ourselves with the embodied experience of living, or opening up the mind so that attention is sort of broad. Kind of think of us of a searchlight instead of a flashlight, very broad and receptive. As well as things that have to do with loving kindness or connection with other people. And through all of these kinds of practices, what people end up doing is cultivating the full suite of strengthening of attention so that now instead of getting depleted in terms of their attention over high stress, they actually stay stable over time. And we've found with certain groups like special forces, for example, that they don't even stay stable. They actually got better than where they started under the high stress circumstances because their motivation was so high. And that kind of data makes me very excited and hopeful that for all of us right now, I know many of us are experiencing sort of this fogginess, or, I mean, I would say it's a dysphoria, it's fear, it's uncertainty, and kind of a cloudiness of mind, a mental fog. And we can pick up these practices at any moment. And it's as little as something like 15 minutes a day to see benefits.
Goldie, what are some ways to practice mindfulness when you're stuck at home, whether you're a kid or adult?
We make it simple, particularly when they're very young. We do name sort of parts of the brain that have a character. For instance, the amygdala is like a barking dog, right? And when he barks, the wise old owl in the prefrontal cortex can't think and can't remember and can't do anything because basically it's hijacking the energy and the ability for the prefrontal cortex to stay awake, to actually for the light bulb to go off, to have ideas and make decisions and, analyze things and learn. And so they learn a little bit of a story around each part. So they really understand how to quiet the dog down in the doghouse for a while. They also understand that the amygdala is actually there to protect them as well. So we give them sort of a very light understanding of what happens to calm themselves down and how to do it. We tell them to breath, and we have our mindful breathing exercises that we do. And then we do our brain break. And we do that, as I said, 3 times a day. And with that, we do gratitude journals. We do mindful listening. We do mindful tasting, mindful, all of these areas of, and also pro-social, which is, kindness, acts of kindness. They all have a neurological correlate to them to build more brain fitness. And that's really the resilience that we want to build. And they come out, I feel so calm. I felt happier, and you hear great stories around how they solve problems through their mind up or mindfulness.
And I think what's so neat about that kind of a classroom setting is that, and the way that the teachers get so creative with it. I remember that there was a story I heard about one of the teachers who, of course they can focus on their own breath and be quiet and turn down the lights and everybody's quiet, but to do it in an active way is also really fun. So there was one exercise where they had the kids in a circle and they had to pass around this bell, and the bell would ring, very light movements would make the bell ring. And the goal was to get it around the entire circle without it ringing once.
Oh, that's so cool.
Just very attentive, listening, very careful and deliberate in the passing it along. It takes this same idea, but naturally and organically blends it into kind of a fun and unusual classroom activity.
That's a great one. I remember one where we have a stone, it's a gratitude stone, and we sit in the circle and we pass it on and say the thing that we're grateful for on that day. And one little boy who was really felt bullied and he felt outside of the circle. And one little girl got the gratitude stone and she said that she was grateful for him. And I mean, I brought tears to my eyes because I watched this little boy just beam and feel like a part of everyone. And it just unlocked him. And so there are many beautiful things that can happen that actually emit some really great neurotransmitters, right? And they actually can make you feel wonderful. And the brain kind of likes that, so.
Amishi, do you have examples of practices like that you have researched in that work with your adult population?
I think the core practices are the same. We're trying to kind of get 3 things very well tuned up when we do mindfulness training. And I would say what Goldie is describing is mindfulness training plus this other really good stuff that comes from positive psychology, having to do with gratitude and positivity, etc. So it's sort of a combo package. Most of my work is really in the realm of mindfulness. So let me just describe the 3 things if that's helpful. The first thing we already talked about, we can think of the flashlight metaphor. It's about the ability to cultivate focus. And that starts out very simply by just giving somebody, any of our participants, an object to focus on, whether it's a sensation in the body like breathing, or it could be a visual image, or it could be a phrase. The goal of that practice is to keep your mind steady on that object. When you notice that it's wandered away, you just simply bring it back. And that's actually what I describe as the push-up. Now, it sounds simple enough, right? But if you actually sit down and try to do it, it's very hard. Because the first thing I think people get very familiar with is this notion of mind wandering. That even though all I have to do is sit here and focus on my breath, there's all this inner chatter that's going on. There's all these dialogues and plans and regrets or worries that are coming up. While focusing is a very important thing that we cultivate, the second important thing with mindfulness practice is this noticing aspect. So that we call, more technical term would be meta-awareness. It's awareness of our own mind, noticing that the mind has a mind of its own. And often we want to be aware of it just because we kind of get a better idea of what's going on with us. If these continual worries come up, we can actually then direct the flashlight to it and say, oh, maybe I need to pay attention to this preoccupation right now. So focus, meta-awareness. And the third thing I call kind of shorthanded as drop the story, which is that we can't help it. We make stories and elaboration and associations and create this narrative of our lives. And one thing to keep in mind is that thoughts are not reality, right? Thoughts are not facts. So even as we are focusing on the breath and we notice the mind has wandered, it may have wandered to a particular view of the future, that, oh my goodness, coronavirus is just never going to go away and I won't be able to live my life to the fullest, etc. And all of a sudden we're in this very well-developed narrative that's horrible. It's a horrible reality. Just to notice that is a story. That is something my mind has created. The reality is the reality. And as Goldie said at the outset, remembering to come back to now, that all we really have at any moment in our life is now.
It sounds so simple, yet we all know that it's extremely tough. When coronavirus started, a lot of people were adopting a routine and working out at home. But now it's clear that this is going to be a marathon and not a sprint. So how do you stick with it?
First of all, what do you intend to be? Do you intend to be healthy? Do you intend to be happy? Do you intend to be good at what you do? Do you intend to be a good mom? Intention is everything. And you know what? So is grit. We are living inside of our bodies. We are inside of our mind. We literally have control over these things because we intend to. I want my body to be healthy. I want to work out every day. I make sure I do that. I want to stay the course of what has to happen, irregardless of what happens. This is just about personal intention and grit and I can do attitude.
I'm going to present the counter argument.
Okay, good. Go ahead. I
love that. That's inspiring me to remember to be all I can be in some sense. I think it's very necessary. But I also think that, as somebody who fully acknowledges I'm experiencing depletion, I'm experiencing worry, I'm experiencing uncertainty. These are realities of what this moment is. And I guess my orientation at this point is to really lower the bar. And what I mean by that is to not have any aspirations to crush it.
You're right.
One thing that I know is that the more demands I put on myself, the more stressed I can become.
Right.
So
Right.
in some sense, it's developing a trust that no matter what, whether the situation is joyful or whether the situation is very difficult, that steadiness of mind, that presence that I have is able to be here to watch what is occurring. And what I've been trying to move toward and actually guide even people in my own lab and in my own family to think about is just how can we just have some opportunistic moments where we have something we do every single day and we usually do it mindlessly. How can we just use those moments to do it a little bit more mindfully? So one example I often give is brushing your teeth. Usually you don't even remember brushing your teeth, but I want you to. I want you to from the moment you hold your toothbrush, putting on the toothpaste, feeling the sensations of, the toothpaste in your mouth. I want you to do those with full intention of experiencing the unfolding of that. Remember, mindfulness is always here for us. And it didn't take me any more moments in my day to do it, but it just gave me a little sense of I'm still here. I'm still experiencing the unfolding of my life. And though there is a lot to worry about and a lot of uncertainty, I can still return to this sense of steadiness and trust myself that I can get through it.
So you both have been doing this for so long. Can you give me an example of a time when mindfulness has really helped you in your own life?
I mean, I think the whole reason I study mindfulness in my lab came out of a very personal journey for me. And it was it's a combination of what we were just talking about a moment ago. I mean, I've always been sort of very ambitious and driven and passionate about a career as a scientist and not willing to accept that I have to sacrifice anything about what it means to be a successful woman. I wanted to have a very successful marriage and relationship and have children and still have a thriving career. And what I realized after a couple of years into my first faculty position, this is when I was at the University of Miami, my son was probably about a year or two old. My husband was in grad school. Outwardly, everything looked great. I had the dream job. I had a running lab. But what started happening, and it kind of took me by surprise, is I was so stressed at keeping it all together that I had lost feeling in my teeth from grinding. And that was a pretty powerful feedback moment of like, how is this possible? I mean, I'm doing it all. And what I slowly realized with that kind of very potent lack of sensory experience is, oh, actually, I'm not all that present to what's happening. I mean, mostly I'm just on autopilot. I don't really know, I kind of am buzzing past my dear husband and my wonderful child, and I'm kind of checking the boxes without really feeling like I'm attuned to them. And that's actually when I went to mindfulness as a personal practice. It actually came out through a colleague of mine who's a neuroscientist, Richard Davidson, who had suggested that it may be a way to change negative moods into positive moods. And that intrigued me. In fact, it made me a little bit irritated because I grew up with a family as an Indian woman who meditated. And in fact, my earliest childhood memories are of seeing my dad doing the mara, doing the meditation practice in the morning. And I always thought that's great for them, but not for me. And so when he said meditation, I was really like, no, I don't think so. But, this is a colleague I respected. And I thought, let me give it a shot. So I started practicing very simple mindfulness practices, just like the ones I was describing. Pay attention to the sensations of breathing. When your mind wanders, return them for maybe 15 or 20 minutes a day. And what started changing was kind of remarkable. I mean, I would say my entire life changed without any of the external circumstances changing. And it was sweet little things like noticing the look on my son's face when he would be excited or nervous about something, or a little look of concern in my husband's eyes, or realizing, hey, I'm not like screaming at him when I'm annoyed. I'm talking to him about what might be the challenge. Or when I'm reading my son a book, I'm actually there to hear the words he's hearing instead of checked out. So all of a sudden it went from feeling like I was somehow distant from my life to really being embodied in it. That was a big one.
Well, my aha moment was when basically I was a dancer and I was a professional dancer. And I got pulled out of the chorus line. It's like an old Hollywood story. And I suddenly was put into a TV series that I got the job for, which I couldn't believe. And I really had a dream and an expectation for my life. And I had it planned out really nicely. It didn't work out. I was on this TV show and I started experiencing anxiety and panic attacks. And so I went to a psychologist and started to understand, to excavate a little bit of my psychology. And while I was doing that, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi was there, and there was all the Beatles, and a time when we were doing TM meditation, transcendental meditation. And this was a mantra meditation where they give you a sound quietly and you repeat it over and over again. There was beautiful incense, flowers, the wind was coming through the curtains in this room, and I started to use my mantra and meditate. And I cannot explain, something happened to me. It was as if this feeling of joy, my happiness had been buried, and I was reconnecting to the seed of joy that in some way I believe we're born with. And sometimes it just gets layered over and caked over, and we forget that we were smiling little babies one time. And I just started to giggle. This is what my instinct was, to giggle. I mean, it was an inner giggle, right? But I had found a piece of me that I thought I lost. That actually changed me in such a way that I was able to look at people when they said, oh, I love your work. Oh, I love you. Or, oh, I don't like her. Oh, read a bad review. It isn't about me. It's about how they're processing their emotions through me. And I was really able to individuate from my quote unquote ability, stardom, I guess you could call it, or visibility as a celebrity. And I was able to focus on the things that I always mattered most. And that was happiness, having a family, being a mother. And I won't put away also my psychology and understanding more about myself. But meditation has been extremely helpful throughout my life.
Goldie and Amishi, you both are so inspiring. Goldie, would you lead us in a quick meditation?
Sure. Okay, so what we'd want to do is you want to sit on the seat, you can sit on the floor, someplace to be comfortable. Don't put your body in any stress. And wherever you're sitting, allow your body, just allow it to feel heavy. Feel yourself on the floor. Feel yourself in the chair. So you actually can start to actually relax. It's very important. I can do a bell. I'm going to do this because this is what we do with the children. The reason why I do this is because it gives the children something to anchor their brain on, their mind. So what we'll do is, when you can't hear the chime any longer, relax our hands, turn them over, and then we can start following our breath. Make sure you're not forcing anything, you're just relaxing, and know something about your breath. It changes. It's not always even. That's okay too. Just watch. If you got to take a deep breath, take a deep breath. It's all okay. There are no rules. There's nothing strict about this. And then remember, when thoughts come, that's what brains do. They think. And what we're trying to do is basically manage our thoughts. Let that go. Don't let your thought hijack you from your breathing. Then go right back to your breathing. And don't get mad when you think 1,000 times during this meditation. Just bring it back to your breath. That's what creates a strong, fit brain. All right, here we go. Now we turn our hands over just to show that we're no longer here. And now we're going to attend to our breathing. Follow your breath. Let your thoughts go. Come back to your breath. Now, with a smile on your face, open your eyes. Move your body around. Notice how clear everything looks. Every time I do this, suddenly, I don't know, I have more clarity of vision or something. It's great. So that's very short. And as you go for longer periods of time, you will be able to have and understand how quite beautiful it is to sit in silence. If you have 5 minutes, 5 minutes. But it's something I would really, really try.
Well, this was amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your mindfulness journeys with us and showing us how anyone can take steps towards living more mindfully. Thanks to everyone for tuning in to this Time for Health Talk. For more information on living well, please visit time.com/healthtalks. Join us next time for more tips on making wellness a priority.
Thank you, Goldie, Amishi, and Mandy. And thank you to CVS Health for helping to make today's conversation possible. We hope you enjoyed today's Time for Health Talks, and we thank you for spending part of your day with us. Be well.